If you like this video, please rate, comment, share and subscribe. If you dislike it, please tell me why so I can improve. I want to talk today about mitochondria. Mitochondria are small bodies. There can be thousands of them in each cell. They are basically the batteries of the cell, and what they do is they do most of the work of the breakdown of glucose to release energy as adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate is the main power in the cell that keeps it alive. There are two processes that are involved. This is why we need to breathe oxygen. There are two processes involved in the release of energy from glucose, which is the end product of carbohydrate metabolism. One of them is glycolysis, which occurs in the cytoplasm around the mitochondria, and the other is in the mitochondria. Glycolysis is not very efficient. It produces something called pyruvate, and it produces a few molecules of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which are used for energy. The main work is done by the mitochondria. Now, mitochondrion is probably the descendant of a bacterium that lived billions of years ago freely in the environment and got captured by cells and evolved into something that was much reduced. And it has its own DNA for that reason, and it also has its own ribosomes, meaning that it can make its own proteins. And the proteins it makes are the ones that break down and move things through the citric acid cycle, also known as the Krebs cycle, the tricarboxylic acid cycle, or oxidative phosphorylation. Once glycolysis has released a little bit of energy from the sugar, that's the anaerobic side of it, it can't proceed without the provision of oxygen. The oxygen enables the mitochondria to release the chemical energy from what's left of the sugar by the time it enters the mitochondria. The mitochondria have little pores in them that let certain molecules through that have a weight of approximately less than 5,000. And when they enter it, there are a number of layers and cristae, and then there is a sea of enzymes, and these enzymes break the pyruvic acid down into various different forms. Now I'm going to put those up on the screen. I'm not going to pretend that I remember what order they're in, although I remember what they're all called. And they are significant in various different ways. When this breakdown process is occurring, it's going to release carbon dioxide and water, and that's why we breathe out carbon dioxide. Life on this planet without the Krebs cycle would be very limited, and it has been argued also that life in the universe is probably quite rare because of the complexity of having to evolve the Krebs cycle. Without the Krebs cycle, nothing would breathe oxygen and things would live on a very low energy level. There are of course mitochondrial diseases, and mitochondria are inherited through the mother because they are in the cytoplasm of the cell and not the nuclear DNA. So you can always tell where somebody comes from through their mitochondrial DNA. And you can trace this back around 60,000 years to mitochondrial Eve, who is the common ancestor of all people living today. She wasn't the first woman, she was just the common ancestor of everybody living today. There's also y-chromosomal Adam, who lived thousands of years apart from mitochondrial Eve, who is the ancestor of all men living today, because only men inherit the Y-chromosome. I realise it's not that simple, but let's just stick to that, shall we? There are a couple of common diseases that are often influenced by mitochondrial function. One of these is osteoarthritis. When osteoarthritis occurs, the reason it's happened is that the turnover of cell division in the joints is not fast enough. The cartilage in the joints is constantly being worn away by movement, and when it's worn away, it gets replaced by mitosis of the cells in the cartilage. These cells are not well provided with oxygen, because if there were small blood vessels in the joints at that point, they would be broken and the joint would rapidly fill up with blood and blood clots and it wouldn't be able to function. So they have to rely on a fairly distant source of oxygen. So when there's a defect in succinic acid metabolism in the Krebs cycle, that will show up as the cartilage in the cells wearing out more quickly and causing problems. The other defect that's very common is fumaric acid. Fumaric acid is produced again in the Krebs cycle and is the stage next to succinic acid. Fumaric acid in the Krebs cycle, where it goes wrong, you will get a pile-up of cells in the epidermis, or you can get a pile-up of cells in the epidermis, and this pile-up is known as psoriasis. Obviously there are a lot of other factors involved in psoriasis as well. Because of these two processes, it is possible to help people with osteoarthritis using succinic acid, which is found in amber. Therefore, oddly, and I know this works because I've tried it with people, if you apply amber to the joint, it can relieve osteoarthritis. There are other forms of osteoarthritis which are to do with defects in the blood supply to a particular muscle that leads to atrophy, and the muscle twisting the joint in the wrong direction because it's not antagonized properly. And also there's the usual occupational arthritis due to repetitive movements. As far as psoriasis is concerned, this can be helped firstly by sorrelin therapy, sorrelin UVA therapy, which is the stuff that's in a lot of the carrot family, including giant hogweed, which you have to be very careful with, of course, and there's a video on that. But one thing you can do is use fumitory, because fumitory is high in fumaric acid. So you can help psoriasis over the bump, although you will want to do with lots of other things, because obviously psoriasis has an important psychological component and a lot of other components. You can help it over the bump, as it were, and make things easier by providing fumaric acid in the form of a cream or as taken internally, and one way of doing that is with fumitory. That's all I've got to say for today. I hope that's clear. Oh, it also means that osteoarthritis tends to be inherited through the mother, and I think probably psoriasis does as well, although I haven't checked that, because it will be in the ovum, which has the cytoplasm, rather than the spermatozoa, which just have loads of mitochondria, which are generally not usually inherited. There's one case known where mitochondria have been inherited from the father in humans. There are also a number of mitochondrial diseases, which is why some people are said to have three mothers, because if you can replace a mitochondrion, that means that's come from an ovum of someone who doesn't have that disease, plus you've got the, not three mothers, sorry, three parents, plus you've got the sperm and the egg cell nucleus forming the other two parts of the genome. Effectively, DNA in a mitochondrion is the smallest chromosome in an animal's body. I say animal because chloroplasts also contain DNA. Okay, that's it for now. Bye.